Hello, everybody. Not everybody, but everybody who's here. It's the same thing every time, isn't it? Hey, Webb. Hey, Chuck. Hey, Frank. Roger. Vern. Who else? Who else is here? Wow, you guys started talking earlier. Hello, Dawn. Dawn's in the show today. Hank's in the show today. Other people are in the show today because I got some interesting feedback. I wonder what you thought of the event. Stick around. We'll talk about it afterwards. In the meantime, I guess I'm going to talk about it beforehand. For the audio podcast and just, for this thing that we do. I'm glad you're all here. I am recording. Everything is off. Well, everything that needs to be off is off. Hopefully there won't be the static today. Why don't we get started? There. Now, why don't we get started? Sure. Hardware, wetware, and one more thing. It is Tuesday, the 10th of November, 2020, and this is macOS Ken Live. The gang is all here for one more thing. And then, tomorrow we'll do some other stuff, but that doesn't count. That's all just, extra. Hi, I'm Ken Ray, welcoming you into this latest edition of macOS Ken Live, the one where we talk about the one more thing. Although I have a feeling we'll be talking about that a lot this week. Second half of the show, we're going to talk about immediate reactions. I had some thoughts on just how the event went itself. Plus, I got a lot of feedback from people in the immediate aftermath or immediately after. It's not like aftermath. Anyway, I got some feedback from some people and we'll go over that. First half of the show, though, we're going to go over the hardware with an understanding that I am not a hardware guy. I am general consumer guy. I was actually thinking about this a lot as I was watching what was happening today and, weighing my own expectations or my own hopes for it versus what we got. We'll get to that part in the second half of the show. First, let's go over what they talked about. Apple today introduced the M1, which they say is optimized for Apple's most popular low-power systems, where small size and power efficiency are critically important. Now, let me just say, I am, well, like I said a minute ago, I'm not a hardware guy. And so, honestly, I thought we were going to see some version or some variant on the A14. And I don't know, there's no reason that I should have thought that, except that I hear that we're going over to an Apple design processor. The Apple design processors that we've had have been the, A series and the Bionics and stuff that we've had for the, for the iPhone and the iPad, right? M1 is actually interesting in terms of the name because of the whole thing that they said that it's optimized for Apple's most popular low power systems where small size and power efficiency are critically important. Is that why we did not have a 16-inch MacBook Pro today with, Apple Silicon in it? Because what we got today, you don't need mobility for the Mini, obviously, but what we got today was an M1 powered Mac Mini, an M1 powered MacBook Air, and an M1 powered 13-inch MacBook Pro. We'll go over what they said first about the M1. The single system on chip improves performance and efficiency. The 5-nanometer processor, so it's got 16 billion transistors, which is more than I could comfortably count in an afternoon. 8-core CPU, 4 high performance, 4 high efficiency, and of course, it's got the smarts inside to decide for itself which one you need when, right? 8-core GPU. It is the world's fastest integrated graphics, according to Apple. A 16-core neural engine capable of processing 11 trillion operations per second, which is more than I can do in an afternoon. And of course, it has the latest secure enclave. It is built for Big Sur, or rather, Big Sur was built for M1. Interesting thing about Big Sur, it comes out Thursday. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. As far as the machines that they introduced, the MacBook Air, they say, is up to 3.5 times faster than previous generations, up to 5 times faster graphic performance, up to 3 times faster than the best-selling Windows laptop in its class. So I assume that would be the ultralight or ultra portable. And it's faster than 98% of PC laptops sold in the last year, according to Apple. It is fanless, so it either runs cool or you're going to have to get used to it running hot. No fan in the MacBook Air, though. 18 hours of wireless lab, 15 hours of wireless web, 18 hours of video playback. The price is exactly the same as it was. The MacBook Air starts at $999. The education version starts at $899. And I assume that's for returning students and faculty and staff and things like that. You have to go through the regular hoops. There's not like a special education version that you can just walk in and buy. You get the idea. The Mac Mini I mentioned earlier is 3 times faster CPU than previous Mac Minis, 6 times faster graphics, 15 times faster machine learning performance. That one starts at $699, which is $100 lower than the previous Mac Mini. And then finally, there is the 13-inch MacBook Pro, 2.8 times faster CPU, 5 times faster graphics, 3 times faster than the best-selling Windows laptop in its class, 11 times faster machine learning performance, 17 hours of wireless web, 20 hours of video playback. This one also did not change in price. Starts at $1299, $1199 for the education units, or for education pricing, excuse me. Every one of these can be ordered right now. They start shipping next week. Now, they really do start shipping next week if you take the lowest off-the-rack version. So they all ship, I want to say, with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Forgive me, I don't have it in front of me. But basically, if you take the lowest storage, lowest RAM, you can have that either next, what is that, Monday or Tuesday, the 17th or 18th? Is that right? Yeah, I think so. Or next Tuesday, Wednesday. Changing anything on that configuration does change it a bit. And it looks like just starting out, the 13-inch MacBook Pro is the hardest one to get. Now, when I say hard to get, I want to say that upping the RAM and upping the storage, because again, I did the thing that I do where it's like, okay, if I was buying one of these, what would I buy? Which is a whole other thing to think about. I used to do Mac OS Ken. For about 3 years, I did Mac OS Ken on about a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old MacBook Air. So it can handle audio, editing and things like that, or the old one could. And like I say, that one was like a 7 or 8-year-old machine. It's still kicking around here someplace. It's still being used occasionally for, other people who need computers and things like that. So I don't know how much computer anybody needs from these machines. See, that's the whole thing where you'd want to go into a store and find out from somebody or, try them out, get a feel, things like that. Anyway, just for the standard machine, you can get them all next week. Changing anything on them is going to push out that time a little bit. As it stands right now, though, you'd have whatever you wanted by Christmas or Hanukkah. Not Diwali, because that's already happening. So I'm sorry, but you can still pick up one by the end of the year is the point, well inside the end of the year. I wish I knew what else honestly to say about the hardware. I know that I've talked on this show, on Mac OS Ken, on In a Few Minutes, every place where a Mac is basically the kind of thing where when I need it, I'm then going to look for exactly the machine that I will need. All of those things that I just read to you that make almost no sense to me, I mean, I expect all of them. I expect it's going to be faster than the last generation. I expect the graphics are going to be faster than the last generation. I know they talked about the image signal processor on the new MacBook Air, I believe, and they also have it on the MacBook Pro. That sounds better to me because basically as, hey, the camera's better. Things are going to look better. There's going to be less noise. Those things kind of make me want to rush out and get one. But, only because I would like to have the best thing, every chance you get. This machine is fine for me right now. I'm looking forward to when it is finally time for me to go and get a new Mac, seeing what they have available. That said, I'm glad I'm not in the market right now because what I would want is a 16-inch MacBook Pro. And to do that, you'd have to still go for Intel. We don't know when they're going to have the next round of these available. So personally, I'm glad I'm not in the market. We got feedback from somebody that we'll talk about in a little bit who was sitting there ready with his credit card when they said 16-inch MacBook Pro. And of course, they didn't say that. So now he's holding off. But he's an interesting use case. I did, as I say, get some feedback from some people who actually did pull the trigger on some stuff. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I would love to hear if you did as well. So feel free to leave me a comment on this video. You can also email me, info@macosken.com. I'm curious if you did get something, what did you get and what pushed you over? And if you saw anything that made you think, I'm not going to do that, I'd like to hear from you too. Not just the, well, I don't need a new Mac right now, because that's most of us. But if you thought going into this, they're going to have something for me, and then they didn't, I'd like to know why. So, like I say, you can leave a comment on this video, or you can send me an email, info@macosken.com. I want to talk in a moment about the event itself. First, though, I want to tell you about a neat thing that's happening Thursday. As I've talked about on this show before, I do a show called The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac, where we talk about security stuff, privacy stuff tied to the Apple ecosystem, specifically the Mac, but we do wander into iOS as well. It just so happens that this Thursday we're doing a show looking at the privacy and security features that have been added into Big Sur. So on the day that Big Sur comes out, the checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac, is actually going to be covering some of the security features brought to you in Big Sur as well. So look for that wherever you get podcasts. You can also find it on the Secure Mac site, which is securemac.com/checklist. Actually, is where you go directly for the podcast. And it'd be great if you did. And tell your friends. That's the other thing. This week is honestly for people who are keeping up with Mac stuff right now. Generally speaking, that show is a show that would be great for your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your friend who says proudly, I don't know anything about computers, because they're probably also the person whose password is password123. So it's a great show to check out for people, especially who don't keep up with Apple stuff, because it hopefully will bring them along to a more secure place. But this week, it's just for you if you're keeping up with the latest. Big Sur, privacy, security. Tell your friends. Let's go over the event itself. I'm curious about the use of the phrase "one more thing." And I know we talked last week and this week about that must indicate something besides the Macs. And it turns out, no, it did not indicate anything besides the Macs. When I was talking on In a Few Minutes last week with Peter Cohen, he felt like they needed to come up with a new line anyway, because that was Steve Jobs' line. My argument at the time was Tim Cook uses that line when he feels like he's got something, that's really going to knock it out of the park. From a consumer standpoint, I don't know that what we saw today knocked it out of the park, but it definitely is a game changer for Apple and for Apple enthusiasts, and honestly for the future of the whole Apple ecosystem, because of the way you're going to be able to write an app for the Mac that's going to work on the iPad, that's going to work on the iPhone, or at least, theoretically, you should be able to do that. We talked on macOS Ken earlier today about the fact that a lot of developers aren't going that route. I'm kind of curious if that's just because, there hasn't been time yet, or if that's because, in some cases, like the fact that Facebook is not making any apps available for the Mac, that could be part of the warm war between Facebook and Apple. Who knows? There was nothing today that's going to make people rush out and throw money at them, unless they were already looking to buy a Mac, or unless they're the most ardent Apple enthusiast, right? Or the person who has to have the latest and greatest. But what they did was game changing today. So using the phrase "one more thing," I don't know. It felt like it might have been not misleading. The reason I said today's show was called Hardware, Wetware, and One More Thing. We didn't know exactly what to expect, except that we knew there were going to be Macs. Certain people who thought there were going to be other things. Just about everybody who thought there was going to be something else thought we were going to see Apple's AirTags today. And of course, Tim Cook put that to bed in the first couple of minutes of the presentation, saying today is all about the Mac. Okay, well, that's done then. Today is all about the Mac. He said that. I don't know. There were things that I expected, thought might happen. I really honestly thought having a consumer event for the Mac meant that they were going to introduce something besides a better Mac. And again, it's not a disappointing machine. It's really fantastic. It was just kind of a weird thing to do, like, building up to the holidays with what to the average consumer is going to look like the same computer. I kind of thought they might tackle something on price. While the Mac Mini did come down by $100, everything else stays the exact same price. It looks exactly like a MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro. They did not change anything there at all. The one thing they changed is the chime is back, but I think the chime is not actually with the hardware. I want to say the chime is with Big Sur, if I'm not mistaken. And so then looking at the event, it's like, well, did they need to do something more? And the answer is no, they did not need to do anything more. Tim Cook was barely on stage for this thing or on screen for this thing. But when he was, two of the things that he pointed out were that the Mac was up 30% last quarter, and 50% of the people who bought a Mac last quarter are new to the platform. Who was it? One of the analysts, I can't remember, it was either Samik Chatterjee or Amit Daryanani. One of the analysts said that he was actually looking for Apple Silicon to bring the price of the Macs down. And who knows? It might bring the price of the Mac down at some point. It's not doing it today, not doing it tomorrow. His feeling, though, was that you would open up an addressable market by 10 to 15 million units, which is as much as 15 billion extra dollars to Apple's bottom line. Except Apple seems to have no problem making money, and they seem to have no problem attracting people to the Mac. Now, of course, it was up 30% last quarter because COVID-19 and working from home and learning from home and things like that. And that, fingers crossed, is not going to be forever. Right now, though, they don't need to do anything on price. I've been watching Apple for 15 years. Every time they come out with something new, I think they're going to hit something hard on price. And they've only really done that with the iPhone SE and Apple Watch SE. I mean, like, even the iPhone 5C was only moderately less expensive. And I'm not complaining about the price. It's just every time they look like they're going to launch into something that's really going to go after the consumer, it's not on price that they do that, generally speaking, unless it is a budget friendly thing that they're introducing. I won't say that I'm disappointed. I'm sorry that I was wrong. But I was far from the only person who was. So there we go. Two cute moments to tell you about before we move on to listener feedback. Well, some of it's listener feedback, some of it's stuff that I spotted online. The two funniest moments, I think, were Craig Federighi opening up the MacBook Air with Barry White playing in the background as soon as he opened it. Somebody commented on Twitter, find someone who looks at you the way Craig Federighi looked at that MacBook, which, of course, was the plan. The song, by the way, is Playing Your Game, Baby by Barry White, if you want to keep up with that. Oh, baby. The other thing was Hodgman turning up at the end as PC. Kind of disappointed that Justin Long wasn't there as the Mac, but I guess the Mac was pretty well covered for the event. Hodgman turning up at the end was kind of amusing. Let's really quickly go over some reaction that I've seen. Alex Lindsay, you know him from Mac Break Weekly and other things that Alex Lindsay does. His quick take: Apple Silicon will make it very hard for others to keep up. Full control of the hardware and software is lethal. I'm not ready to move over yet, he says. The keynotes, Saul's stage, are getting better and better. I don't see how Apple goes back to the slow live presentations. I think he's 100% right. 45 minutes, this thing, 45 minutes. And it was a packed 45 minutes, but it didn't lag. The production quality is great. Getting to see, again, bits and pieces of Apple Park is great. Having it just, zip along and nobody has to fly anywhere, nobody has to get sick, nobody has to check into anything, and we all get to go. I mean, that part's kind of interesting. I'm sure I know members of the press are being reached out to, being talked to, getting sample things, things like that. They're still being treated to more information and in a different way, but it's kinda neat that we all get to go to these events now. Even though they televised them before, obviously being in the room was different. And sure, I'd love to be in the room again at some point, but yeah, I'm kinda with them on the, virtual presentations. David wrote to me to say what struck me was, not all the wonderful things that the M1 chip could do or the introduction of the 3 Max. What got me was the 45-minute length. See, there we go again. Apple has changed their paradigm of 90 minutes or longer, showing a variety of things. This time it was 45 minutes, showing 3 Max in the M1 chip. I would think that in the online future, Apple could focus on short presentations, major focus. They've already gotten rid of the cost of the press and planning and travel, so why not? It's 2 votes for not calling anybody out there, although they built that theater, that beautiful, beautiful theater. Dawn wrote in to say that she likes the M1 chip. Craig explaining Big Sur, the updated Mac Mini, and the 13-inch MacBook Pro. No fans. Does that mean longer battery? Or no fans, longer battery life, fast, lower prices? Well, no. And also, it's only the MacBook Air that doesn't have the fan. The MacBook Pro still, FYI. She didn't like the fact that nothing else was announced. And as a side note, Apple Park is simply amazing, says Dawn. I want to work there. And she loves seeing Hodgman at the end of it. Sailor J wrote in to say that he thinks it was a much more than just a one more thing event. I don't think that people will rush out to buy unless they're actually in the market. Also, we now lose Boot Camp, which was a market for Apple hardware, to the Windows crowd. Hank wrote in, I had been planning to get a new MacBook. My current MacBook Pro is from 2013 and getting a little wonky around the keyboard and trackpad. Still, 7 years is a good run, he says. Just put in my order for the new MacBook Pro, 16 gigabyte memory and 512 gigabyte SSD. Like my old one, I might have waited for a 16-inch model, but what's the fun in waiting? It was a nice event, nice and short. It was fun to see Hodgman at the end. Why couldn't they get Justin Long? He asks. I was wondering about that too. Unless, again, the Mac had enough stage time. Finally, the one that I alluded to earlier, my friend John Spencer from the creative agency Electric Fun, he actually wrote to me during the event saying, now, this event is very exciting, which is funny to me because this is the third event of the year, and he did not message me during the other two. So as soon as the event was over, I wrote back to him and asked him why. The M1 chip is groundbreaking for a number of reasons. I could write a novel, he says, not just for battery life, but for pro apps. I use pro apps all day, every day for designing and building web and mobile apps entrenched in rich media. To be able to truly get the performance Apple is promising in this new architecture is beyond thrilling. I honestly think I will be able to do so much more and be waiting on my Mac far less. Rendering ProRes 4K video alone takes all of my current Mac. I have to literally just let it sit and do its thing and not touch it for 24 hours or more sometimes. On top of all this, there's the positioning of Apple as a chip maker, rivaling NVIDIA and Intel, and that alone suggests amazing longevity. Plus, running native iOS apps on the Mac. Talk about QA and testing heaven. I could talk about it all day. Maybe I should have him on. That said, he is holding out for the 16-inch MacBook Pro because he wants the real estate. I assume, too, that is going to be a more powerful machine because, again, that's really interesting to me, the naming of the M1. Is it going to be M2 after that, or will it be something else? Because obviously a laptop is mobile. I'm assuming the M stands for mobile. What is the next one going to be? I have a 15-inch MacBook Pro. I would probably be interested in the 16-inch MacBook Pro when it's time to let this one go play on a farm, because just the screen real estate, just the size. This machine, I'm sure, is more powerful than anything I need. I'm sure, honestly, probably the machines they introduced today are more powerful than anything I would need as well. But enough about me. And enough about this for now. Well, people who are here live in the chat room, please stay because I will stop by and talk to you in just a moment. Seriously, anybody listening, watching later on YouTube or listening to the audio only podcast, I would love to know what your thoughts were as well. So do me a favor. If you're watching the video, please leave a comment on the video. I will check that and try to include it in tomorrow's show. Or send me an email, info@macosken.com. That is info at macosken.com. Let me know what you got. Let me know what you're holding out for. Let me know what your thoughts were on the event. Basically, I want to hear one more thing from you. Yeah. Reaction probably from Wall Street on tomorrow's Mac OS Ken. And of course, we'll get back here tomorrow. And I'm willing to bet do a bit more reaction to today's event as well. We got that coming up tomorrow. Oh, and in a few minutes kicks off again tomorrow. Adam Christensen joining us with his thoughts on today's event. Wherever it is. Talk to you soon. Wait just a moment if you would. Sorry, I got a text message right in the middle of that was wildly distracting. The one horrible thing. Yeah, all right. I'll check that again in a bit. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me grab my glasses and see what everybody is up to. Anything interesting to talk about today, says Frank? Okay, something's going on with the chat here. No, thank you. Somebody said be sure to, Park said be sure to like the video. Thank you. I appreciate that. I can't tell, Webb, if you're joking or if you're serious about that. Do we not need as much memory? First of all, I did see somebody ask whether OWC will actually go ahead and make it so you can expand it. But is it possible that they're saying the efficiency and the power of the M1 actually would require less memory? I don't know the answer to that question because I don't know if you heard me say, not a hardware guy, but I am curious if anybody else has a thought on that. Eugene says he's tempted by the new Macs, but he wants to wait and see what happens when other people get them first. That's interesting. Frank Petrie says it was exactly what he hoped for. Does that mean, Frank, that you're getting something, or you're just happy to see the direction it's going? Other Macs will have M2, says Nate, Mac Interactive. Yeah, I forgot to talk about the connectors. I haven't really looked at them. It kind of went by me fast. I've gone back and watched a couple of things again, but haven't looked at it closely. Where else are we? Bill says that the silver MacBook Pro is shipping faster than the space gray. That's interesting. I like the space gray, though. Not that there's much difference, but I prefer the space gray. Okay, I think Bill might actually be answering the question that we were talking about a moment ago as far as the memory. The memory is part of the system on chip, so they're tied to the M1, says Bill. Where else are we? That might actually, I think I might have that in my notes for tomorrow's Mac OS Ken, actually. I kind of blew through the hardware part fast today here, like I say. Redneck Tech says he'll be waiting for the bigger, badder M chips. And that'll be kicking Intel's backside, he says. Chuck says if you look at the one more thing in the context of all fall announcements as a whole, it makes a little more sense. It's not, I mean, that's the thing. You can't even really say that Apple set up an unrealistic expectation there, although I have heard people say that. I mean, it is a game-changing announcement. I want to say that the iPod Hi-Fi event that also brought us the iPod socks, Steve Jobs said one more thing, but it was a Steve Jobs line. He could say that whenever he wanted to, and it was fine. It's something that Tim Cook has held in reserve, but there's no reason to be reserved about this. If it goes well, and it's hard to imagine that it won't go well, because I mean they're betting the store, right, on this. And it's not that they can't, find other processors or go back to Intel hat in hand or anything like that. But man, do you look bad if you do that? I don't think there's any reason to think that it's going to go poorly. So I mean, to say they're betting the store, I mean, it's a big enough announcement that you can say one more thing. It's just sort of a loaded statement as well, which we're going to think about for like another 24 to 36 hours, maybe. It's not going to mean anything day after tomorrow. They were just, until the next time they call something one more thing, which I'm going to guess is going to be a very long time. Frank says he's glad there wasn't a redesign the last two times, the cube and the garbage can. I thought the cube was pretty. Actually, I'm okay with the garbage can too, although where do you put it? Redneck Tech again says, I think the cost of the Mac production is coming down and they're selling them at the same price, which means more profit for them. Yeah, well, that's great because they need more profit. That's fine, though. Ronald says the lack of MacBook price drop is why the price of the stock Apple didn't go through the roof. One thing not covered in the presentation was the price versus the SSD upgrade costs. Are you saying that went up, Ronald, or are you just saying they didn't talk about the fact that you're getting in when you're getting it at the low end? Because I don't know. Did the cost of upgrading the SSD go up is the question I'm asking. If you're still here and want to answer that at the bottom, that'd be great. Frank says he thinks investors are taking a wait and see approach. I don't think this is the kind of thing investors care about. I mean, if it ends up screwing up, right? If it ends up being a disaster, then investors will care. And if they had done something on price that was actually going to drive sales like tomorrow, I think investors would care. I think investors otherwise, though, are kind of like I am. As far as, okay, well, good. The Macs are progressing. We expect the Macs to progress. Investors don't even seem to have cared about the keyboard on these things, right? Investors cared about battery gate, but only because battery gate ended up being a thing where they were like, okay, we'll replace the battery for $29, and that ate into iPhone sales the following year. I mean, if it goes spectacularly bad, investors will care. If it goes well over the long term, I think that's just what they expect the Mac to do. If Apple had come out with something that was the iPhone or the iPad today, then investors might have taken notice. Otherwise, it's just, it's the latest Mac and another place where they're doing very well, is my thinking. But what do I know? Where are we? Oh, my page jumped. I'm probably going to need to go in a couple minutes anyway because I have to turn this around. You guys had a lot to say, though, which I appreciate. Answering my question a moment ago, Frank says that he's happy to see the direction they're going. He might buy one, but he didn't whip out his credit card today. Interesting. Richard thinks that the M stands for Mac, not mobile. Okay. I'm fine with that. It was the whole emphasis on low power portability thing. Although you're right, putting in the Mac Mini sort of kills that. So sure, it could stand for Mac. It could stand for many things or many things. If I'm enunciating, that was funny. John says he's old enough to prefer a bigger screen. I hear you, but he likes the way things are going. I also hear you. Well, I don't hear you, but I read what you're saying. Frank says one more thing is probably done after tonight. You mean throwing that out as a phrase, Frank, or do you mean we're not talking about it anymore after today? Huh. I don't know if did you see yesterday's show, Matthew, with the and another thing? That's my joke was for the December event, which of course there's not going to be one. But wait, there's more. That's really funny. 2 December events and another thing, and then but wait, there's more. And then December 30th, be like, oh, we forgot. And that's the AirTags event. What are the prices of the minimum SSD? I don't have an answer for you, Ronald. Sorry. Right. Done as a phrase, says Frank. I don't think so, but I think we get it very sparingly. I know I've said this a million times over the past week or so, but the last time I remember Tim Cook saying it was 5 years ago for the Apple Watch. So who can say? Hey, Richard Clark just bought the 13-inch MacBook Pro. It's so interesting. Like I was on the page trying to figure out, what the ship times were for things, and there was the thing for the 16-inch, and I clicked on it, and it said Intel, and already in my head there's a little bit of, which is stupid, because I'm sure that machine is more powerful than my machine and more machine than I would need, but it's not the M1 or Apple Silicon. Obviously, until we see it work, there's no reason to feel that way, but I'm already kind of bought in to the change, I think, because, it's change. All right. On all of those happy notes, I'm going to go turn this into a show and start working on tomorrow's macOS Ken. Hey, Chuck Joyner, by the way, in about 50 minutes, 50, is going to be doing a roundup of people talking about today's event over at Mac Voices Live. Chuck, if you're still here, can you put a link or let people know how to find it? I think he does that on Facebook. I'm not 100% certain. But if you want to hear more people talk about it and throw in your 2 cents as well, yeah, hold on. Well, okay. Look for, he'll probably mention it on Twitter. So look for Mac Voices on Twitter or look for Chuck Joyner on Twitter. Frank Petrie actually says it is on Facebook. So it's on Facebook Live. So go over there and check that out if you are jonesing to talk about more Mac stuff. I'm unfortunately not going to be able to join them today, but I know, they got a great crew that goes over there and talks more Apple. Probably some people who are more, well, it would be hard to be less knowledgeable about hardware than me. So you might get a bit more hardware talk over there. Mark Fuccio, I know, often joins, and if he's there tonight, I would imagine he'll have quite a bit to say about the hardware part. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will talk to you soon. Oh, and Frank's going to be there too. So, go bug him. Take care.